Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Boko Haram's latest online propaganda video sees militants level more threats against Nigeria's President Buhari and vow to keep up their insurgency. However, the absence from the footage of jihadist leader Abubakar Shekau could point more to weakness than strength. Also, Somalia agrees to lift a ban on Kenyan khat barely a week after bringing it in. The decision's been welcomed by farmers who count on the crop's export for their livelihood. And the Ethiopian Olympic marathon medallist, whose gesture of protest against his government means he's now too scared to go home, says he fears his country is on the brink of fatal unrest. But first, in their latest propaganda video, Nigerian Boko Haram insurgents have threatened to capture President Muhammadu Buhari and vowed to continue their bloody uprising. Apparently shot this week during Muslim Eid celebrations, the footage shows an unidentified man wearing a sword who says that he's representing the Islamist leader Abubakar Shekau. The Nigerian army has claimed to have gravely wounded him in an airstrike. The video comes exactly 1 month since the jihadists put out a similar one showing some of the abducted Chibok schoolgirls kidnapped in 2014. Well, Anna Cullingham tells us more about what can be read into Abubakar Shekau's absence in Boko Haram's latest video.
It is interesting that yet again here is another Boko Haram video that does not have Abubakar Shekau in it. He really hasn't had much of a presence in recent Boko Haram videos. I think the last time that we heard from him was back in August when he released a video saying that he was still the leader of Boko Haram, because at the time the so-called Islamic State had said that they had in fact appointed a new leader of Boko Haram, Abu Musab al-Banawi, who is the son of the original founder. Now, whoever this man is who appears in this video, he is saying a lot of what we have heard before, making threats to President Buhari. He also talks about no surrender and that they will continue, and he does support Shekau. But I think we've also heard recently out of Borno State that there have been clashes between Shekau supporters and Banawi supporters. So I think this video without Shekau is significant, and it would seem to indicate that there is a possible deep split within Boko Haram itself.
Anna Cunningham there for us in Lagos. Well, staying with Nigeria, customers of the country's largest airline got some good news on Wednesday as it resumed flights after a 24-hour suspension. Thousands of passengers across the continent were stranded as Arik airplanes were grounded on Tuesday. The carriers denied speculation that the shutdown was because it couldn't pay for fuel and claims it was caused by a delay in getting its insurance renewed. A shortage of dollars linked to the drop in the price of oil has hit Nigerian banks' liquidity hard, with a knock-on effect on the finances of the country's airlines. Arik has told France 24 that operations should be back to normal over the next day or so.
We had some backlog in Senegal, which we also have deployed capacity to make sure we've handled them. We have some challenges in Cotonou and Douala, Libreville. We are also making sure that we deploy enough capacity to cater for the passengers. But I can assure you, within the next 24 hours, we will make sure that we have taken all the passengers that would not make their flights to ensure that they make their flight within the next 24 hours.
Well, it's just a week since a Somali ban on Kenyan khat kicked up a storm, and Mogadishu's agreed to reverse the move. The decision to stop planes carrying the plant narcotic from entering Somali airspace had devastated the farmers who rely on its export for their livelihoods.
The embargo barely lasted a week. Somalia agreed Tuesday to lift a ban on imports of Kenyan khat after leaders from the two countries met at a regional summit in Mogadishu.
We talked about how to connect our countries' economies better. And we worked together on the issues of security and improving the free exchange of goods and people.
Somalia caught everyone off guard last week when it suddenly banned airplanes carrying khat from entering the country's airspace. A green-leafed plant with red tips, khat produces mildly euphoric effects when chewed. Its use has long been entrenched in Somali culture, and it's widely appreciated by all social groups. Yet the drug is mostly grown in neighboring Ethiopia and Kenya, where thousands of farmers rely on its export to earn a living. The week-long ban caused entire harvests to rot, as khat must be consumed fresh and can't be preserved. And while its lift has Kenyan producers relieved, many remain angered by the initial decision, which was issued without warning or justification.
If somebody could wake up one day, just one morning, and decide to take that kind of action, who tells you that they cannot do it again?
The plant is illegal in the US, Canada, and most of Europe. But no government, whether the military dictatorship or Islamic extremists, have ever managed to ban it in Somalia.
The bodies of the last two miners trapped underground in South Africa's oldest gold mine have been brought above ground. Both are thought to have been from Zimbabwe. In total, 3 men who entered the disused Langlate mine illegally have lost their lives since their group first became stuck last Wednesday. Rescue workers and volunteers have been working since then to get to those trapped. Retired South African Archbishop and anti-apartheid icon Desmond Tutu has been discharged from hospital 3 weeks after having been admitted for a recurring infection. The 84-year-old Nobel Peace Laureate was hospitalized last year under similar circumstances. This time, he's reportedly undergone minor surgery, and his family said that they're overjoyed to have him home. Bosco Ntaganda entered his 7th day of hunger striking on Wednesday. The former Congolese warlord has refused to attend his war crimes trial at the International Criminal Court in The Hague and has instructed his lawyers to stop representing him. Ntaganda, who was once dubbed the Terminator, now says he's ready to die in protest over his treatment. He says the ICC hasn't given him a fair chance to defend himself. He's denied crimes against humanity charges over attacks his forces carried out on civilians in eastern DRC in 2002 to 2003. The situation's caused a dilemma for the ICC and Taganda's lawyers.
I don't have the feeling that I have before me a man who cannot think, but I do have a feeling that I have before me a man who is emotionally really confused, and I'm doing my best to remove this confusion.
Ethiopian distance runner Feyisa Lilesa won the silver medal in the Olympic marathon in Rio last month, but he didn't take it home. After crossing his arms at the finish line in protest against the Ethiopian government, he headed instead to the US. He's still there and warning that his homeland may be on the verge of severe ethnic violence. Brian Quinn tells us more.
At the finish line of the 2016 Olympic marathon, a gesture of defiance from Ethiopian silver medalist Feyisa Lilesa. Wrists crossed. It was an echo of the sign adopted by anti-government protesters in Ethiopia's Oromia region, an area roiled by unrest in a struggle between the Oromo ethnic group and the government over land rights and alleged human rights violations. Lilesa hasn't returned home since the Games for fear of reprisal, leaving a wife and 2 children in Ethiopia. On Tuesday, he held a press conference in Washington, D.C. to denounce a security crackdown on protesters.
At the moment, the Ethiopian government is killing and repressing its own people. So far, the government has opened fire on peaceful protesters who are asking for their rights, and more than 1,000 people have been killed in the protests.
Human Rights Watch says that at least 500 protesters have been killed by security forces over months of demonstrations, a figure the government disputes. At issue, a government plan to confiscate farmland around the capital Addis Ababa for development and foreign investment. The U.S. has raised grave concerns about excessive force against protesters, calling for an independent investigation into the killings. Lilesa fears it could get worse.
If this situation continues, I have no doubt Ethiopia is staring at the abyss. I am personally very fearful that this is going to take an ethnic dimension, where you will see a Rwanda-like situation, where ethnic groups turn on each other.
Lilesa is in the U.S. on a temporary visa and says he is not planning to apply for permanent asylum. On Sunday, back in Brazil at the Paralympic Games, Ethiopian runner Tamiro Demise also took a silver medal and also finished his race with wrists crossed.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks very much for joining us. Please do so again if you can. Take care.
Reporters, presented by Mark Owen.
Asia is the new El Dorado for thousands of African football players. Each year, droves of them travel to Burma, hoping for a better life. A few manage to kickstart a career, but many never make it off the bench and struggle to get by, with no resources and too much pride to return home. France 24 followed the odyssey of these young African hopefuls in search of their Asian El Dorado.
Reporters on France 24 and France24.com.